Good afternoon, Scarefest family. I hope you all are having a great Friday. I just wanted to post a video as a follow-up of the huge announcement that I said we had for you guys this week. Before I get into that though, I just wanted to let everyone know that Scarefest 2020 is still a go for October 23rd through the 25th in Lexington, Kentucky at the Central Bank Center. We're going to be building a great show for you all this year and we hope to see everyone there. That being said, Scarefest is going to be hosting a second event called Scarefest CyberCon, which will be launching on August 29th of 2020. This is going to be a completely virtual con experience that we're hoping will bring everyone together to meet celebrities, browse artists, shop vendors, and even maybe pick up some exclusive Scarefest merchandise. So we're going to be keeping you guys updated on what celebrities we're going to have, the vendors we're going to be featuring. We're going to have panels, there will be an opening ceremony, all sorts of cool stuff. And we are so excited to be able to bring this to our community so we can all be together in times when maybe we can't be together in person. So look out for updates on Scarefest TV every Friday at 9 o'clock. And, drop some, what do you guys think? It's a virtual convention. It'll be pretty exciting stuff, I think.
The opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest Radio, the radio you can see.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to Scarefest Television. I'm your host for the evening, Wes Forsyth, and yes, I have the shittiest hair that I've ever had on the show. But it's actually worse since I fixed it, so just so you know. And I'm tangled up here. Here we go. We've got a show for you tonight. John C. Gritton will be joining us here momentarily. We've got, of course, co-host extraordinaire Chad Harlan sporting his fresh hair. Technically, that is all fresh, like baby butt hair.
It grows back if you cut it. Turns out, who knew?
It's amazing. Okay, everybody. At the beginning of the show, I played the announcement. If you tuned in a little late, first thing I want to talk about, just very quickly. August 29th, we are putting together Scarefest CyberCon. Hopefully, you're a fan of Scarefest Television. You watched when we interviewed Dirk Strangely, who is the man behind this. Basically, they came up with a platform to do virtual conventions, or just to put a real convention online. They did a test, Quarantine Con. It had some good parts. They found some bugs in it. They've worked those out. And so we are going to go forward with that platform and put on a little convention for you August 29th. Now, this is our way. So many conventions have had to cancel this year. People are looking so forward to the Scarefest. We have not had to cancel. Us and like two others that I can think of have not had to cancel. But I'm going to throw this out there. I'm not authorized to do so. I'm going to let you know that the Scarefest, we've got our first set of guidelines. Now, we've got to do some negotiating. We got to talk to the center. We got to do a lot of stuff. But I can tell you, based on the guidelines from Frankfurt, Scarefest is going to look very different this year. It's completely out of our control. Blame the governor, whatever. We can go forward with the convention. I mean, but the limits and hoops that we're going to have to jump through to bring Scarefest to you is going to create some heartache. We'll call it heartache. We got a lot of stuff to figure out. So that people keep asking about, like, the celebrity announcements. We've got to kind of look at how many people we can get in the building at one time. We've still got celebrity announcements coming. Don't take that the wrong way. But we do have to, everything going forward now, we have to really evaluate. We're trying to figure out how we're going to do the stuff we're famous for. Of course, we've talked about the seminars all year. We don't have guidance on whether we will have any place to have a seminar. We're still looking across the street. Who knows? They might finish the damn convention center completely because there's nobody in their way. So we got that going on. The parties that we're famous for. The social distancing guidelines are going to put a real strain on what we are allowed to do. Not what we want to do, not what we can do, what we are allowed to do. So the reason I wanted to put that out there is that is a lot of the reason behind us going forward with this CyberCon. A lot of you will not be able to attend Scarefest. Maybe you may not want to attend Scarefest just because of what all is going on. So we wanted to be able to bring something to our fans because you all have been graciously patient. You've been enormously supportive, and we wanted to have something that we could give back as best as we can. And if this works, if this goes over, this will be a regular thing that we'll do throughout the next year. We've got high hopes for it. So I wanted to put that out there and kind of explain to you what was going on with that. But yes, as of right now, you all can quit sending messages via Facebook to the Scarefest. The answer is yes, we are having Scarefest. So there. We're 5 minutes late. You don't need Peggy. Don't do time. Okay. Now, that's what I wanted to talk about. Now we're going to go ahead and bring our guest in. John, sorry you had to sit through all that rigmarole.
No, that's good. It's good information. I was curious. I was wondering kind of what the status was on that. So, all good.
Well, now you know. And actually, now John is one of our prospective speakers. If we get to have seminars, John is approved. There, I've got that out of the way. Now, the drawback is that we might just put you out on the street corner and hand you like a megaphone, John.
Hey, I'll talk for it. That's fine.
But what we are going to do, we're going to, if it really, as we get closer, if the speaker situation still looks like it's going to be thin, at the best, we're going to be very limited on how many speakers. We might tap on you to be one of our online speakers.
That's awesome.
So, now, just to get right into that, first of all, let's introduce you a little bit better. I'm not going to read your bio. Tell everybody what you actually are trained, you have a degree in, and what you do.
So, so my degree is in cinema and photography. I went to Southern Illinois University, got a degree there. After my senior year, I went out to Hollywood and had an internship with the American Film Institute. So after that, I came back here to Kentucky. I started working in TV, and I was working for the news, and now actually I work doing video for one of the large healthcare companies based here in Louisville. But in the intermittent time, I've worked on short films. I produced some short films and things like that. So kind of been all over as far as my career goes, and a lot of I'm a big fan of kind of the analytical side of cinema and movies, and I'm looking into them way too deep and everything like that. So that's kind of a nutshell version. So.
Little follow up to that. Now, okay, Kentucky boy, correct? Originally. Okay. I pulled up your old Twitter page, which is woefully out of date. But Bardstown, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
I'm trying to imagine the culture shock of going from Bardstown, Kentucky, to any place in California,
Right.
and then coming back. What was that like?
It was very surreal. You get out there, and Carbondale, where I went to college, is very similar to Bardstown, so that's one of the things that drew me there. So going further out west, the whole thing's like a dream for the first couple of weeks, and you're driving around, you see the Hollywood sign and everything else. And then there's just small surreal experiences that you kind of run into. Like within the first week of my internship, I'm working the Michael Douglas Lifetime Achievement Award that AFI gave him, the American Film Institute Award, and that was one of our jobs as an intern, was to kind of work that as whatever. And they rent you tuxes, and you're kind of running around, and then when the show starts, there's nothing for you to do anymore. So they had Bob Dylan come up and play a song from the movie with Tobey Maguire and Robert Downey Jr., Michael Douglas. I can't think of it right now, but anyway,
They'll tell us in the chat room here in just a moment.
Yes, I'll figure out what that was. So after Bob Dylan played his song, he was going off stage, and so I ran down from the very back all the way around to the front of the auditorium, and here he comes. He's walking up. He's talking to Jack Nicholson, and it was one of the most surreal things ever. So I walk up and I stick my hand out and I say, Mr. Dillon, I just want to say thank you. And he looked at me like, what are you talking about? Who are you? Why are you in my face? And he shook my hand and he kept walking. And so that's and it was all kind of downhill from there. Like, there was nothing else exciting that happened. I met Clint Eastwood that week too. So that was that whole week was very exciting. But then after that, it was kind of like, whatever, but it's kind of hard to top that. But anyway, so yeah, it was very surreal. It never rained out there. I was out there for like 2.5 months, and that had me shook for some reason. I don't know why that was such a huge deal for me, but the fact that it never rained there in LA. But it was one of those things where you get a sense that you're racing with everybody around you. So you're standing behind a guy in line at Taco Bell, and it's like, all right, I gotta order better than this guy because that might be how I get this next job. That casting over there might see my order at Taco Bell and be like, that's my guy. And so honestly, I didn't really, me and LA just didn't get along, I guess. I don't know. I just didn't have what it took. Maybe I was just a little bit too much Bardstown, or I really don't know. But it was cool. I'm glad I got to do it. It's one of those things, like, if I never did it, then I'd always wonder, and I'd always, of course, everybody has those moments in their life where they're like, well, what if I would have done this differently? Who knows? But it was a good time.
Okay, we're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, I will turn it over to you, Chad. Everybody, you're watching Scarefest Television and our guest, John C. Gritton. Do you feel lost in life? Do you seem to be stuck in emotions that are not yours? Is your home not the sanctuary it should be? Contact Spirit Mechanics, where they take a team approach to your metaphysical and spiritual problems. Spirit Mechanics specializes in aura cleansing, stone attunement, attachment removal, and house cleansings. Spirit Mechanics tailors their approach to your individual spiritual path and needs. Now find them monthly at the Central Kentucky Mystical Market in Lexington. Or on Facebook by searching Spirit Mechanics, that's MECHANIX. Spirit Mechanics, for your spiritual health and well-being.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Glenn here from fakeshemp.net. Here for another week with another classic horror film from Down Under for you. And I hope you guys get a kick out of these and track some of them down, because if you don't, then I don't know why I do it. But something that's bothered me is people say that they don't like horror films, but then in the same breath they'll say that they love creature features. Makes no sense to me, because what is a creature feature but a type of horror film? So I've got a creature feature for those of you that don't like horror. Let's take a look. Rogue is director Greg McLean's sophomore film following the runaway success of Wolf Creek, and I'm sure that all of you know about Wolf Creek, right? And in an effort to avoid being pigeonholed into that specific subgenre, he opted for a creature feature for his second film, and Rogue, made in 2007, is a fantastically freaky and entirely kooky creature feature about a giant killer crocodile. Set on a river cruise in the Kakadu National Park in Australia's picturesque Northern Territory, Rogue has a group of camera-happy tourists become stranded and then tormented by a 6-foot crocodile. This is a big mofo, and believe it or not, this movie was inspired by a true story of a crocodile named Sweetheart, which in the 1970s actually did follow and attack tourist boats, and you can look up those headlines online. It's amazing. Of course, just as he did with Wolf Creek, director Greg McLean took the actual true story and used it as his foundation before exploiting the subject and crafting a really specific brand of horror. The result is an effective and atmospheric monster movie that sits proudly alongside titles like Alligator and Lake Placid, and even last year's brilliant chiller, Crawl. And I suppose you might have already recognised some familiar faces in the trailer that's playing, and Rogue does present a who's who of famous faces. Sam Worthington of Avatar fame plays a larrikin-turned-hero. Radha Mitchell from Man on Fire and Silent Hill plays the lead tour guide and heroine. Michael Vartan from Alias and Never Been Kissed plays the token American. John Jarrett, that maniacal bastard from Wolf Creek, plays a mysterious passenger on the boat in a role that actually serves as a nod to another crocodile horror movie that he made in the 80s called Dark Water. Robert Taylor from Longmire plays an arrogant foreign tourist, and Mia Wasikowska from Alice in Wonderland and Crimson Peak plays a teenage girl on holiday with her family. Suffice to say that Rogue is loaded with personalities and makes for a really colourful ensemble. So if creature features are your thing, then Rogue will not disappoint. It's exciting, it's thrilling, at times it's horrific, and when that crocodile starts chomping, it's a matter of every man, child and woman for themselves, and what a rush. And furthermore, if you are not familiar with Greg McLean's work, then do yourself a favour, look him up, watch some of his films, as well as the incredible Wolf Creek 2. He's also made movies like The Darkness, The Belko Experiment with James Gunn, and the really effective Daniel Radcliffe survivalist film, Jungle. Needless to say, he's definitely earned himself a seat at the Masters of Horror table, and he's one that you want to keep on your horror radar. I love a good creature feature. I love seeing people get ripped to parts and pieces. Anyway, I hope you like the look of that one. I hope you track it down. You won't be disappointed if you do. And that's just about all for me this week. Just left with the obligatory listen to my podcast, Good Movie Monday. That drops every Sunday over there in the States. And got some good guests coming up, so you won't want to miss out on any of those. And for now, I guess I'll just go.
Welcome back to Scarefest Television. Chad, over to you.
Good evening, John. Thank you for joining us tonight. Let me walk you back through just a little bit more of the introduction. From Bardstown to L.A., what kind of drove your life in that direction? What made you get so interested in films and television, and what appealed to you about it?
I've been into movies since, since I can remember anything. And the big ones are still there for me. Ghostbusters is huge for me. I'm a member of the Western Kentucky Ghostbusters, which you guys, anybody that's been to Scarefest, hopefully recognizes that. And so I've always wanted, for a long time, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be Batman, of course. You got Michael Keaton's Batman. I always wanted to be Batman. And in '96, it was actually Scream that made me want to be a filmmaker as opposed to like an actor. So that's when I started, scribbling out scripts, and I still have my notebooks full of just really terrible dialogue that I ripped from like Buffy and Dawson's Creek, but I still got them. So that's kind of what pushed me in that direction was that, like I said, there was that element of wanting to be in the movies, and then I decided I wanted to make the movies at that point. Like I said, it was Scream that really kind of made that transition for me. So I did kind of workshops when I was in high school, and then like I said, when I was looking at colleges, I really knew that I wanted to pursue some sort of a film degree. So that's kind of what pushed me there. Was Southern Illinois it was the closest, cheapest film program at the time. I think WKU actually has a pretty good film or media studies program now, but this was a long time ago, and so the programs were different, then than they are now. So yeah, that's really kind of what it was. It's just always been this passion of movies, and I get lost in, and they kind of consume me, and then I consume them right back, I guess. So
What was it about Scream that talked to you so much?
I think that what Scream did was, it was one of I wouldn't say the first, because, I feel like Sleepaway Camp 2 was actually kind of a prelude to this meta thing. But Scream really brought it to the forefront of, this takes place in our world, in our reality. They're talking about Halloween, they're talking about Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. They're discussing the movies. So it's like, wow, this is it. This is real, and even the mask. Even the mask was available, at the store. And nothing was really outside. And so I think that being able to see myself in that, and in that situation, was kind of what really spurned that I can create this. I can recreate this environment, because this is not something that's so fantastical. It's very familiar. And I looked around Bardstown, my small town, and it felt familiar. And it's like, this is cool. This is something that I can recreate and be a part of myself, as opposed to, putting on, a costume and being, Batman. So I think that's what it was. I think that's a way to put it.
I was hoping you were going to say it was the rules. That's always what drew me into that movie is they're explaining every other horror movie while breaking all the rules at the same time. So that's always kind of made that one of my favorite films, because they kind of, like you said, they reference all the other movies while playing it all tongue in cheek, but still making a really good scary movie out of it. So that's always appealed to me. You mentioned the Western Kentucky Ghost Hunters, and I see Ghostface there behind you. I know that you're into costuming and cosplay as well. What kind of took you down that path?
I think it was kind of still the, wanting to be whatever I was seeing on screen, and wanting to be, Batman or Ghostbuster or whatever it was. I've always wanted to recreate what I see on screen. There's that drive to get it as right as I can, to get it as perfect as I can. And, I've always kind of adapted. I remember I had my Proton Pack when I was a kid, and then the Rocketeer came out, and I didn't have a rocket pack. So then I took my Proton Pack and made it into my rocket pack. And so I'm always kind of growing and evolving like that. I had a motorcycle helmet that I like carved out with a kitchen knife. This is like 91. I had no business with this knife. So yeah, hang on a second.
Live is fun.
Always.
Sorry, that was my wife telling me the dinner's here. So,
Hey.
But yeah, so you know, I still do the costumes. I made this recently. Actually, that was my first ghost face mask I ever got when I saw the movie. I got on my bike and rode uptown and bought that from the local novelty shop. But you know, like I said, I do the Ghostbusters. I built several proton packs, and actually that was my first professional costuming job. Was in 1999 or 2000. I sold my first proton pack that I built. So you know, it's kind of gone from there. But
Wow. I appreciate it. Let me toss it back over to Wes.
Okay, now your bio says you've been a fan of horror films from way back.
mm-hmm.
Do you, now that you've been educated in filmmaking, do you watch films differently now?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because, you know, my mom was real strict, so I didn't watch horror movies when I was growing up. You know, I wasn't one of these people who was watching horror movies, but there was always something about every movie that I loved that scared me. So I love Ghostbusters, but the terror dogs at the end of the movie scared the crap out of me. And, you know, so all of my favorite movies had a scene. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, that witch scared me to death. So, you know, that love of horror goes back to even when it was not directly horror. But yeah, you know, you look at movies and, you know, you start to analyze. It's one of those things, it's tough because you don't want to lose the magic, you know. When you know how a movie is made, you understand how grips work, you know about a dolly shot and kind of how that works. It's hard to look at it with those fresh eyes anymore, you know, if that makes sense. So there's that fine line, and I'm one of these people that I'm always noticing who people are. I'm like, oh, this lady was in that movie over there with this guy, and they did this together, and oh, what year was this movie made? And so I'm always kind of wanting to know the background, the behind the scenes. You know, sometimes I'll look up what was happening in society at this time. He's like, oh, this movie came out in 1973. That's kind of, you know, political. What was going on exactly at this time? So, but like I said, I find myself, I never get so technical unless it's really bad. So like Endgame, for instance, you know, Avengers Endgame. I was in it deep. You know, at the end of the movie, I'm like sobbing like a little baby. And
I'm the only person that didn't cry at the end of that movie. Go ahead.
Yeah, it got me hard. I have a Captain America suit, so I was like in it, dude. I'll tell you what. But you know, I find myself watching movies thinking that I might do something different. Like I've seen a couple of movies, you know, like for free on Amazon Prime, and that's another thing that is kind of fun to do is wow, man, I would have made this different decision, or I would have maybe changed that dialogue a little bit, or this could have done, you know. So sometimes that's one way that kind of having that background has changed how I would look at a movie. But like I said, I try, and even the old school favorites that might not have been made the best, you know, I allow myself to still get lost in. You know, Friday the 13th Part 5, maybe not the highest production value, but I love it, you know, and I still can remove all that knowledge, I guess, and let myself get into it, you know. So
I agree. And when I watch a movie, I try to take into consideration the state of the art at the time the movie was made. where was filmmaking at that time? Had that discussion with Mick Strawn a week or two ago, because he was part of the shitbird Fantastic Four movie that didn't get released, and then because the good one came out, and I do think it was a good one. I think first Fantastic Four was a good movie. The last one, the reboot, that was a dumpster fire. So there's just, it was bad. But I see what you mean. Now going over to your seminars, now the reason I kind of went down that path. Now your seminar is titled basically the Golden Age of Slasher Films, or something to that effect. So that pretty well, I guess you're calling that the 80s, for the most part. Where do you really think that slasher films as a popular genre? In other words, what's the earliest one that really you fold into this that caught your eye as a good slasher film?
I think that so a lot of people consider Psycho to be like the first slasher movie, which is fine. It's a slasher movie, but whenever I'm talking about the golden age, to me, and so you got Psycho in 1960, you got Texas Chainsaw in 74, and of course those are very enduring. But Texas Chainsaw was not a commercial success when it came out. It kind of had this cult following. People were outraged by it a lot, and it was very extreme, which is part of why it's kind of endured. But to me, Halloween is the first time we have this low budget, $330,000, and it goes on to be a smash success. And, that's why we have the sequel 3 years later. And to me, that's the beginning of this slasher craze, where you're able to take these no-name actors, a minimal budget, and flip a huge profit on it real quick, real easy. Studios didn't have to do much. To me, Psycho doesn't fit into that because it was an Alfred Hitchcock movie, and you had that hype and that buzz, and you had Alfred Hitchcock's name before Psycho ever dropped. So kind of what I'm looking into is that the balance between kind of the budget and the success and how that kind of ties together. And so what happened in the 80s, of course, is that they just cranked them out. And the audience had seen them. They'd seen everything by the time you get to the third, fourth sequel. And so by the end of the 80s into the early 90s is when they just, it's almost like they were throwing it at the wall to see what stuck. And that's why you got, Jason Goes to Hell, you got, Nightmare 6, Freddy's Dead. And, so that's why you had to, and that's why I think Scream kind of brought everything back together. And it was almost like it had to get to the bottom before something could take a look at it and bring it back up into the main consciousness. So the seminar, kind of what I go into, starts with Halloween. We talk about, Texas Chainsaw. We talk about Peeping Tom and some of the other ones kind of pre-Chainsaw. And then we have, and it kind of starts with Halloween, gets into the Fridays, the Nightmares, gets into kind of some of the offshoots, the sleepaway camps and the burning and kind of all that stuff. And then it kind of culminates back with Scream in the mid to late 90s.
Okay, we're going to take our commercial break. Everybody, we will be back after these commercial messages. Akashic Awareness is a metaphysical healing and learning center unlike any other. A large selection of crystals, gems, and minerals greet you as you walk in the door, but from that point onward, the journey is yours. They offer a great selection of metaphysical tools, state-of-the-art holistic healing, with classes and lectures scheduled throughout the month. Akashic Awareness is open Tuesday through Saturday, noon until 6:30, 7 on Friday and Saturday. Visit their website for a current calendar of their almost daily special events and guests at akashicawareness.com. And while you are there, be sure to join their email list to stay current. Akashic Awareness, 328 Sycamore Street, Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
This week in horror history, horror literature had a major moment back in 1816 when Lord Byron challenged his house guest to see who could write the best horror story. One of those guests happened to be a young Mary Shelley, and her story was called Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus. Frankenstein is the story of a scientist who creates a creature during a science experiment, but he later rejects the creature, and then the creature seeks revenge on his creator. Although widely known as a horror story, Frankenstein is also credited as being the first true science fiction story. Over the years, the story of Frankenstein's monster has spawned several plays, television shows, and films, and is one of the best-known monster stories in history. Sci-fi horror had a major debut this week with the release of Predator back in 1987. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the leader of a team of special forces set out on a rescue mission that turns into a fight to survive. And they are methodically hunted by an extraterrestrial warrior. Though it was met with mixed reviews, Predator has since gone on to be considered one of the best action sci-fi movies of all time. The success of Predator led to 3 direct sequels and a crossover with the Alien series. This week back in 1975, swimming in the ocean suddenly became a thing of nightmares thanks to the release of Jaws. Unsuspecting beachgoers are being hunted and attacked by a man-eating great white shark, and the town sheriff, along with a marine biologist and shark-hunting fisherman, set out to find and kill the shark before it kills them. Jaws was the first major motion picture to be shot in the ocean, which made it extremely difficult to use the mechanical shark for most scenes. So, director Steven Spielberg used the minimalist approach and simply implied the shark's presence throughout the film. This method left a lot to the imagination, and audiences were absolutely terrified and delighted. Jaws was an immediate commercial success, and to this day, it is in the top 20 greatest films of all time.
And welcome back, everybody, to Scarefest Television. By the way, tonight's backdrop for me, that's the sandstorm that's coming to kill us all. Quick reminder, everybody, August 29th, we'll be putting together the Scarefest CyberCon. I'm still trying to picture what they have in mind for opening ceremonies for that. We'll have to work on that. And maybe I should do the tomb attendant rather than disappear as myself. I'll do the tomb attendant all day and get our asses sued by the Crypt Keeper. Over to you, Chad.
So what I took from all that, John, was that Halloween 3 is the greatest movie ever made.
I like Halloween 3.
I did too, actually. it gets so maligned, but it's a good movie. It's just a little different.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
So Scream, you're kind of throwing that out as the culmination of the slasher flick. Where horror went after that, do you think it was a natural progression or a unfortunate deviation?
Yeah, I think you had a certain audience, especially people who were the teenagers, you know, and you had in the late 90s you had a lot of media that was targeted at teenagers because, you know, we had a lot of money, we had everything else to spend it on, you know, we didn't have our cell phones keep in our face, so we had to have something. So, you know, you had a lot of the teen offshoots from Scream, and Scream I think was one of the first ones that really targeted that audience. But then you had Urban Legends, you had Valentine, you had I Know What You Did Last Summer, and you know, in TV and everything. So you had those movies, but then there's your older audience who really was about the classics. And, you know, you had your fans from the 80s. And so that's why post, you know, teen revolution, you get into the remakes. And that makes sense because, you know, I think Texas Chainsaw was probably one of the first big ones in '03. And, you know, then we had, I think Friday was '09 and Nightmare was 10. And so you had that big boom of remakes right there. So I think that, you know, Scream opened this pocket of teen movies. But like I said, and it's funny because if I had talked to somebody, you know, a little bit older who's really dedicated into that slasher genre, and I tell them, you know, Scream changed my life, they're like, you know, they laugh at me. They're like, are you kidding me? Really, Scream? And so I think that's kind of how we got there. Was you had the teen boom, then you had to get back to the basics to pull back in that classic slasher audience.
Well, even then from there, I mean, they moved into the Saws and the Hostels and kind of a deviation. And I always kind of look at that as a line of, yeah, you had the Screams and kind of the more traditional slashers that followed it. And then you get into the extremely graphic that I know everybody's trying to raise the bar, but I was always nostalgic, I guess, for the traditional slasher that, yeah, you've got some gore and stuff in there, but it's not quite as gratuitous, I guess. And so I always look like, and yeah, I know they came out with some of those movies you mentioned, but I always kind of look at Scream as that dividing point. We went through the late 70s and 80s, and we had a bunch of really good slasher films, and then Scream hit, and then it was kind of a switch to, we have to go to the next genre that's more exploitive.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
So you talk about Scream kind of changing your life, and you mentioned Halloween as kind of the culmination. Which one of those has influenced you more in kind of your work and your writings?
That's tough because those are my two top. That's my two tops. It's hard to have them against each other. That's my two boys, girls, whatever they are. Anyway, I would say because Scream got me into Halloween. So I saw Scream. Actually, I saw it on VHS the next summer of '97. And, you know, I wanted more. And so the Scream opened up all these doors. I didn't know who Leatherface was when it was referenced in the movie. I didn't catch most of the references, but I wanted more, you know, so it gave me a starting point. It was like, here's what you need to check out to get all caught up, you know. And I read in an interview, or I saw an interview with Kevin Williamson, the writer of Scream, that, you know, Halloween was one of his favorite movies. And there's a lot of Halloween homages in Scream. So, and I've always loved Halloween, of course, growing up, you know, the holiday, the highlight of my year, still the highlight of my year. And so Scream introduced me to Halloween, and then Halloween went on to further change my life. But if I had to say which one started it, I would say Scream probably was the one that really got me going. So.
Kind of touching back on the Ghostbuster stuff. What drew you to costuming that? And I'll tell you, I read some stuff on your Facebook page about it, so I thought it was a really interesting story.
Yeah. So, let's see. It was like 1999. I had a class assignment. Basically, I went back and reread. I found the novelization of Ghostbusters 2 in the attic somewhere or whatever. So I read that. And it was right at the beginning of these message boards. There was one called A Site of Outprops, ASAP. They had a Ghostbusters section. And basically, I got on there and I started finding plans. I started finding out there were other people who were doing this. I built my first proton pack in 1999 with, a collection of stuff that I found around the house. And, I had it. I sold one. So that was kind of the start, was in those early days of internet. I don't even know if the RPF was around the replica prop form. I'm sure it was, but I hadn't heard about it. But anyway, so fast forward several years. I was in college. It was in 2007, and I was still a huge Batman fan, especially at that time. And that was right in the mix of The Dark Knight. We first seen, a couple of pictures of Heath Ledger, and I was going to be Heath Ledger Joker for Halloween, but it was the year before the movie hit in 2008. This was Halloween of 2007, so we'd only seen one or two pictures of him, real blurry pictures. So I just kind of replicated it, and I went to the bar that night, and I was used to kind of being kind of out in the middle, in your face, whatever. And I creeped everybody out. I was like, man, this is no fun. I'm just standing in the corner, and so I went home and I got online. I was like, what do people really like? I was like, people like bunny stuff. It's like, do people like Ghostbusters? And so this was November 1st, 1:30 in the morning. Actually, so yeah, that's really how I got into the Ghostbusters thing. And then it ebbed and flowed for a couple years, and then I graduated college. And actually, there was a dude that lived in the same town that I went to school, and he built the proton packs. He did the casts, the shells. Before that, it was kind of you can either glue some stuff to a board, or you can, this was 11 years ago. So Ghostbusters costume has come a long way. It's very different now than it was then. Excuse me, but so anyway, that's how I got into it. And then I graduated college, and basically I sold another proton pack to Ryan Kemp, who was one of the founders of the Western Kentucky Ghostbusters. And, so I was out, and then I came back in basically, and I tracked him down, and that's how I got hooked up with the Western Kentucky Ghostbusters. But I mean, it's been a 20-year-long journey, and I'm, it's still going. I'm super excited. I love these people like family. So it's a good time.
Well, it's a great group, and we always look forward to seeing them at Scarefest every year. So, so it's a good group to be able to claim association with.
Yeah, they are right. They are right.
I'm going to toss it back over to Wes with a question about why is my head so big on the screen?
Because your head is that big in real life. We'll be right back after this commercial message.
Everyone is talking about CBD oil, and it seems like almost everyone is using it. The research is ongoing, but the apparent health benefits are overwhelming. If you're going to use CBD products, though, what brand should you buy? First, find out where the hemp was grown. Imports are flooding the market. How potent is it? Look for a brand that plainly states its concentration on the label. And look for full spectrum CBD. This means the oil contains CBD and all the other cannabinoids, terpenes, and nutrients that are found in the entire cannabis plant. Look for Blue Leaf CBD oil. Blue Leaf Naturals is a Kentucky proud company. They use only Kentucky-grown hemp, supporting Kentucky farmers and businesses. Visit their website at blueleafcbd.com now and use the code SMILE at checkout for free shipping.
Coyote Chris Sutton.
Shamanism.
Spiritual advisement.
Paranormal investigations.
Inspirational presentations.
Bringing light to the darkest places for over 20 years. Go to coyotechris.com to learn more.
Hey there, Scarefest fans. Just wanted to let you know that this is Joe Lewis from Bonehead Weekly, and this beard is getting unruly. I wanted to do this last week, this movie, because I saw it and I loved it. Loved it. Even the third act, Wes. But I decided to do Dracula and give it just a few more days because we spend so much time on the other show I do, The Hunt. Now, here's what is so interesting about The Hunt to me, other than it's a really good movie. The Hunt was written by Nick Cuse and Dave Lindelof. He and his partner, Nick Cuse, writing, decided to make another movie and do it for Blumhouse. Now, if you know what Blumhouse is, if you're into horror film, it's a small production company, and then pitched an idea of the most dangerous game set in our political times called The Hunt. It's interesting because I think The Hunt may very well be more known for the controversy around it than it is the actual movie. So it was supposed to come out last September in 2019. There were some mass shootings in August, and it got really political. Trump even tweeted about how this is another one of those Hollywood neoliberal films attacking red folk or red states and conservatives. And the movie's really not about that. It got postponed. Something happened this spring. What happened in March? Oh, yeah, we all got shut down because of COVID. So it went on to video on demand. Now, I'm fine with that. I understand that that's probably where our entertainment's going. I wish I could have seen this on the big screen. I had every intention of going and seeing it on the big screen until I also got shut down because of COVID. The Hunt is an updated version of The Most Dangerous Game. The Most Dangerous Game is a short story most of us read in grammar school, elementary school, about a guy who hunts other people. Well, The Hunt is this. Liberal, rich folk decide to start a hunt of these red conservatives. Now, that sounds really political, and it is really political. It pokes fun on both sides. A lot of the things that I saw from people were before they ever saw The Hunt saying how bad it bashed conservative folk. I've seen The Hunt, and I'm going to tell you that, yes, they get bashed, but I don't know that they get bashed as bad as the liberals. Maybe both equally. I don't know. If you want to watch it and write down who got bashed here, who's made fun of here, who's made fun of there, but the liberals are pretty damn stupid in this movie. In fact, the only really smart character is played by the lead actress, Betty Gilpin. I love this movie. It's what horror does best, when it can be satirical, funny, educational, enlightened. What I always tell people is the great thing about horror films is that you can tell any story in a horror film. There's a famous filmmaker, and I think it was Lawrence Kasdan, who said you can tell any story in a Western. Now, he's smarter than I am, and he wrote Empire Strikes Back and Silverado and a bunch of other things. He's really talented, but I disagree. I think a horror film is the one genre, I don't know that it's my favorite genre, but it's the one genre you can tell any story in, because you can do anything in a horror film, because there really aren't a lot of rules. And I love The Hunt. It twists, it turns, it has curves where you think it's going to go straight. It has a backstory. It explains a lot of the characters, even though it doesn't explain it all at once. People who you think are going to live don't necessarily make it that long, and people who you think are going to die maybe make it a little longer. Is it a brilliant film? No. But is it a fantastic Saturday night, an hour and a half movie? Absolutely. I can't recommend it enough. Could you get offended by watching The Hunt? Probably you could. Should you? No. If you're conservative or liberal and get offended by this movie, you need to toughen up a little bit, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. This is very subjective. Your tastes and your feelings are subjective, and they're your own. I highly, highly suggest you watch The Hunt, okay? This has been Joe Lewis of Bonehead Weekly. Thank you so much. Go out there.
And welcome back, everybody, to the final few minutes of Scarefest television. Our guest tonight, John C. Gritton. Now, John, you touched a little bit on it about the remakes. Now, if I understood the story correctly, you watched Scream, and then you went back and watched the movies they were talking about. Now, in the meantime, I'm sure you've seen several of these remakes, reboots, redones. How do you feel about taking a classic movie and remaking it?
Honestly, I don't think it's quite as offensive as everybody likes to make it out to be. People always say, one of the favorite things of fans to say is, well, you're going to ruin the original, or you're going to ruin the original. Well, unless they go out and burn every copy of the original, it's not going to ruin anything. You're still going to have it. I think that there are a lot of good ideas. I think that people are tied to these characters in a very passionate way. I know I am. Like, you know, back, it's interesting, back in the old slasher days, the villain was the hero. That's who we showed back up to see, was Freddy, Jason, you know, Michael Myers. We didn't care about the victims. You know, you had a few regulars, Jamie Lee Curtis, you had Heather Langenkamp that would, you know, come here and there. But anyway, I think that remakes are fine, because there's stories with these characters, and what they're bringing back is those villains that we all love to see. You know, I think one of the better remakes was actually Friday the 13th, where they took Friday 1 through 4 and crammed them all into one movie. You know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I thought the first remake wasn't bad. Even Nightmare on Elm Street, I didn't think was awful. I mean, it's not Robert Englund, but you know, it had its moments. So yeah, I'm not angry at remakes. They have their purpose, I think. So
I have softened my stance on them. Usually my objection is, you know, why? It's not that it's might be done better or worse. It's just, you know, why? But I recently got to see the new Chucky movie, Child's Play, the new version.
Yeah.
And one thing I notice a lot about remakes is they want to differentiate themselves from the first one, and sometimes they go overboard, i.e. Fantastic Four. And that was just like, now I was not excited about Child's Play, because I thought, oh great, you know, it's going to be Terminator with a doll. The storyline was good. The special effects were good. My objection to the entire movie is they were so worried about the new Chucky doll looking like the old Chucky doll that the new Chucky doll was just fucking creepy. There is no way any parent would buy that thing for their child. No way. So, now, the follow-up to that is, now, I saw on YouTube, you've done some fan films. Do you think, back in the old days, to be a filmmaker, you almost had to work, you pretty well had to work your way up through the ranks. Nowadays, with everybody, i.e. me, having access to all this great technology, a lot of people are doing these films, and then in the theaters, you know, everything's going CGI. Do you overall think that is a good thing for the genre, to have so many people dipping their toe in that water? And how do you are you a practical effects guy, or are you a CGI guy?
Well, I'm a practical effects guy. I think that so many times CGI can pull you right out of the moment. And I've seen a few movies that they had the opportunity to use practical effects and they CGI'd it up for no reason. And it takes you right out of it. And that's very disappointing, I think. But I think that we're going to see a new... I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know that we've been doing this YouTube thing long enough to really understand how it's affected the film industry in the way that we can look back 20 or 30 years ago and understand what happened then and how it affected the industry. And it's just like this quarantine thing. It'll be interesting to see how film changes after this pandemic. It's just one of those things that, you know, I think that people are going to see different, you know, you're going to see different things change with this YouTube generation. And, you know, and I think you're going to see some talent come out. And I think that probably what will happen is people will, you know, you'll have these filmmakers who will get big studio jobs that started with YouTube channels. And, you know, distribution's going to change with, like the gentleman was talking about, you know, things are going to be video on demand now. And I think we're moving in that direction. And I think theaters are really going to have to change to keep up. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes down.
That actually worries me. I'm not saying you're wrong by any means, but I look at the music industry. Now, okay, they're still making music. I get it, you know, but they say nowadays the money's in the concert. Because, you know, I paid $10 a month to Napster. You're right about theaters, but there are a lot of people like me that have gotten used to this entire plethora of free and on-demand movies. In other words, I will only rent a movie if I've got the guy coming on the TV, on the show. I mean, I'm that lazy. I'll go through and bitch every week that there is absolutely nothing new on Amazon Prime. So I'm worried that I'm a capitalist, so I'm worried that once the profit margins slim down so much, that a lot of these movies, if they can't get the distribution in theaters where the real money is, I don't know that a lot of them will get made, or they might get made with so many corners cut that it'll take all the fun out of it.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there's going to be, I think that's really interesting because you're going to have people who are going to be able to pull it off with the creativity, and they're going to be able to work with what they got, which may or may not be much. And I think those are going to be the bright lights. And I think those are going to be the filmmakers that you're going to see coming up. But you're right. I mean, there's going to be so much, and there's already so much out there to try to keep, you know, I find myself scrolling through Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, and finally just getting fed up and turning it off. You know, if I try to sit down and watch something while I eat, I always want it to be rolling before I eat, and my food's cold before I can find anything because there's so much out there. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I think that having this technology at everybody's fingertips is interesting. My kid watches YouTube. We canceled cable because they watch YouTube, and nobody was watching cable anymore, you know? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we, although I don't like the term cut the cord because I'm still paying $60 a month for my damn DSL so that I can have this privilege. So in other words, you know, it's not a big savings to me. But I agree with you, and but like, okay, now my big drawback right now is that when I want to see a movie, I'll go type it in. Now sometimes, what was it the other night? I was looking for one, and the only way I could watch it was to buy the damn thing for $15 download. And you know, no, I don't want to buy the movie. I want to rent it. But there's so many services right now. I cannot tell you how many times HBO and Cinemax have been movie blockers for me, because they get a movie and they hold it forever. And so now going back to your CGI comment, I actually saw a movie that was ruined by CGI. I forget which one it was, but it was a horror movie, and the guy, you could tell it was low budget. The guy, but it was fairly well done until the kill scene, and they used CGI blood. Yep. And it ruined, the CGI blood was so bad that it just ruined the entire movie. And that's the kind of things that I hate to see. I mean, you know, buy some corn syrup, people. Buy some corn syrup. So anyway, that's the end of the show. We've kept it pretty much on track after getting a little bit of a late start. But everybody, the reminders are August 29th, Scarefest CyberCon. Keep your eyes open for the news on that on Facebook and on the show. Scarefest 2020 is a go. Quit texting us and asking us if we're still having it. If something happens and the governor says hell no, we will put the news out there just as quickly as is feasible. But right now, they're just wanting to make it difficult. They just want to see what kind, how badly do they want to have this convention? Our guest tonight has been John C. Gritton. John, filmmaker, costumer we've talked about. And now, one thing we didn't touch on. Now, what do your day job now? You said you work for a health company. What, I mean, I'm assuming it's in the commercial video type department, if that's your training? Or?
It's in the AV department. So, we do internal training videos and promotional videos, mostly internal. We produce meetings, and so, it's definitely still within the video realm. And so, yeah.
Okay. So everybody keep an eye open for John. He'll be presenting about slasher films, and if he's not at the Scarefest, he will be at one of the Scarefest Cybercons. We'll make sure of that. Everybody, this has been Scarefest Television. We'll see you next week.